The mirror in room 13. There's a small, unassuming hotel on the edge of town that few people know about. It's the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it: old, weathered brick, vines creeping up the walls, and a sign that creaks in the wind. Locals call it the Holloway Inn, but no one in town really stays there anymore. Visitors, drifters, and travelers passing through are the only ones who check in. There's a reason for that. The inn has a dark secret: room 13. The legend. It's said that no one who has ever stayed in room 13 has left the hotel alive. The stories vary, but they all agree on one thing: the room has a mirror. An old, full-length mirror with a tarnished silver frame. And if you look into it long enough, you'll see something that isn't you. Some say it's a shadow. Others say it's a face, twisted in a grin that doesn't belong to your reflection. But everyone agrees, once you see it, it never lets you leave. The hotel owner, a man in his 60s with deep-set, weary eyes, never offers room 13 unless there are no other rooms available. He'll hesitate, suggest another hotel down the road, even offer a discount for a smaller room. But sometimes, when the hotel is full and travelers insist, he hands over the key with a warning: don't look in the mirror. Of course, no one ever listens. The arrival. Samantha and her friends were road-tripping across the country, seeking adventure and stopping at random places along the way. After hours of driving, they stumbled upon the Holloway Inn late one rainy night, eager for a place to rest. "We only have one room left," the old man at the front desk said, handing them the key. He paused before adding, "It's room 13. I'll give you a discount, but try not to look at the mirror." They laughed it off, assuming it was some old ghost story to scare tourists. Samantha, the most skeptical of the group, joked, "We'll be fine. I've never met a haunted mirror I couldn't handle." They climbed the narrow staircase and entered room 13. It was quaint, with old wallpaper and a musty smell that reminded them of forgotten attics. In the corner, just as the legend said, stood a tall mirror with a silver frame. It looked like something out of a Victorian mansion, the kind of mirror that belonged in a museum rather than a rundown inn. Samantha walked over to it immediately, her friends rolling their eyes. "Come on, guys," she said with a grin, "it's just a mirror." She peered into it, her own face staring back. She tilted her head, smiled, and even stuck her tongue out. Nothing. The mirror was just a mirror. Her friends joined her, laughing at how ridiculous the whole situation was. "I'm more scared of the carpet than this mirror," one of her friends joked. They spent the next few hours talking, playing music, and slowly drifting off to sleep. But around 2 a.m., Samantha woke up. She wasn't sure what had disturbed her, but the room felt different. The air was heavy, pressing down on her chest. Her friends were asleep, their soft breathing the only sound in the room. But something was off. Samantha glanced at the mirror. At first, she saw nothing but her own reflection in the dim light. But as she looked closer, her breath caught in her throat. The reflection wasn't quite right. Her reflection was standing, even though she was still sitting on the bed. It was smiling, a cold, unnatural smile that stretched too wide, as if the corners of her mouth were being pulled by invisible hands. Samantha's heart pounded in her chest. She blinked, rubbed her eyes, but when she looked again, the reflection hadn't changed. It was still standing, still grinning. Suddenly, the reflection's eyes shifted. It wasn't looking at her anymore. It was looking behind her, at her sleeping friends. Samantha gasped, whipping her head around. There was no one behind her, just her friends, oblivious and fast asleep. She turned back to the mirror, her stomach twisting in fear. But now, the reflection was gone. The mirror was empty. Panic surged through her veins. She backed away, trying to wake her friends. "Guys, wake up," she whispered, shaking them. "There's something wrong with the mirror." Her friend stirred, groggy and confused. What? What are you talking about? The mirror. It's not right. They turned to look, but the mirror reflected nothing out of the ordinary. Just their tired faces staring back. They laughed it off, dismissing it as a nightmare or sleep-induced hallucination. Samantha, you're just tired. Go back to sleep. But Samantha couldn't shake the feeling of dread that clung to her. She kept glancing at the mirror, half expecting to see the twisted smile reappear. Hours passed. Her friend slept soundly, but Samantha couldn't. She kept her eyes on the mirror, her heart racing with every flicker of movement in the shadows. And then, just as dawn was breaking, she saw a figure, her reflection, slipping out of the mirror. It stood at the foot of her bed, grinning down at her, the smile even wider now, stretching impossibly across its face. The thing that looked like her wasn't human. Its eyes were black, voids that sucked in the dim light, and its fingers were long, too long, curling towards her. Samantha tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure leaned closer, its cold breath on her face, and whispered, "I'm you now." And with that, everything went dark. The aftermath. The next morning, the hotel owner found Samantha's friends in room 13, confused and shaken. Samantha was gone. Her things were still in the room, the bed unmade, but there was no sign of her. The police were called, but after a thorough search, there was no trace of Samantha anywhere. Her friends swore she had been with them all night, but the last thing they remembered was falling asleep. No one had heard or seen anything strange. The only thing out of place was the mirror. In the weeks that followed, the police investigation turned up nothing. Samantha had simply vanished. But the guests who stayed in room 13 after that claimed something was different about the mirror. When they looked into it, they didn't just see themselves. Sometimes, if you stand there long enough, you'll see her, Samantha, or whatever's left of her, smiling back at you. Her eyes black as coal, her grin stretching unnaturally wide, as if she's waiting for her next victim. And if you ever stay in room 13, remember one thing: don't look in the mirror too long.